The most painful moment in a marriage is not when someone leaves. It is when you realize they stopped choosing you long before they walked away. Emma Carter stared at the empty chair across from her and tried to convince herself that 10 more minutes would change everything. The restaurant was exactly how she remembered it from 6 years ago. The warm golden lights, the quiet music, the small table near the window where Ryan had once promised they would always celebrate this day together. Their anniversary. 6 years since they exchanged vows. 6 years since Emma believed they were building a life side by side. She had arrived early because Ryan hated waiting. She had chosen his favorite restaurant because she remembered every small detail about him. She had brought the gift she spent weeks searching for, wrapped carefully in dark blue paper because that was his favorite color. But the second chair remained empty. Her phone stayed silent. At 8:15 p.m., a message finally appeared. Something came up. "I will make it up to you." Emma looked at the screen for a long time. No apology. No explanation. No question about whether she was still waiting. Just a sentence that sounded exactly like every other promise she had heard before. She placed the phone face down on the table. The waiter quietly asked if she wanted to order. Emma almost laughed. 6 years ago, Ryan would have noticed the smallest change in her expression. He would have known when she was tired, when she was worried, when she needed him to simply sit beside her. Now he could forget the one day she had spent preparing for all month. She ordered dinner for one. Not because she was angry, not because she wanted to punish him, because for the first time, she admitted something she had avoided for years. She was lonely even when she was married. When Emma returned to the house they bought together, the clock on the wall showed 11:48 p.m. The flowers she arranged that morning were still on the table. The candles she planned to light remained untouched. The entire house looked prepared for a celebration that never happened. At 12:07 a.m., the front door opened. Ryan Mitchell walked in, still wearing his business suit, carrying his laptop bag and the exhaustion of another long workday. He stopped when he saw Emma sitting in the living room. "Emma, I know I am late." She looked at him calmly. That was what surprised him most. No tears, no anger, no argument waiting to happen. Just silence. "Do you know what day it is?" Ryan froze for a second. Then his expression changed. The realization arrived too late. "Our anniversary." Emma nodded. "Yes." Ryan stepped closer. "I am sorry. The meeting ran longer than expected." Emma looked at the man she had spent 6 years loving. The man she defended when others said he cared more about work than people. The man she supported through every difficult moment because she believed marriage meant standing together. "You forgot," she said softly. Ryan opened his mouth to explain, but there was nothing that could explain 6 years of small disappointments adding up quietly. "I did not need a perfect husband," Emma continued. "I did not need expensive gifts or grand gestures." She looked toward the table where 2 glasses were still waiting. "I just wanted to feel like I mattered." Ryan became silent. Because for the first time, he realized this was not about one missed anniversary. It was about every dinner she ate alone while waiting for him. Every opportunity she postponed to support his career. Every moment she chose them while he assumed they would always exist. Emma reached for a folder beside her. Ryan noticed it immediately. "What is that?" he asked. She placed it on the table between them. "Something I should have done a long time ago." Midnight arrived quietly. Emma opened the folder. The papers inside were already prepared. Ryan looked down and saw the words that changed everything. Divorce agreement. For 6 years, Emma had fought to keep their marriage together. Tonight, she finally stopped fighting alone. Ryan stared at the papers on the table as if they belonged to someone else. For a few seconds, the confident CEO who could negotiate million-dollar contracts disappeared, replaced by a man who suddenly did not know what to say. "Emma." His voice was quieter than before. "You cannot be serious." Emma looked at him calmly. That was the part Ryan struggled to understand. He expected anger. He expected tears. He expected the emotional argument he had seen countless times in movies and heard about from friends. He expected Emma to ask him to change. But she did not. She simply sat there, exhausted from asking for the same thing for years. "I am serious," she said. Ryan picked up the folder, but did not open it. "This is because I missed tonight?" Emma looked at him for a long moment. "No." Her answer came immediately. "This is because tonight reminded me of everything I already knew." The words stayed between them. Ryan frowned. "I know I have been busy." Emma gave a small, tired smile. "That is what you always say." "Because it is true." "I know." She nodded. That is why I kept understanding. Ryan walked toward the kitchen, running a hand through his hair. Emma, I have been building a company. You know how much pressure I have. I do know. She followed him with her eyes. I knew before anyone else did. I was there when you worked through weekends. I was there when you worried about whether the company would survive. I was there when you needed someone to believe in you. Ryan stopped. And I appreciate that. Emma looked down. That is the problem. You appreciate what I do. You just stopped seeing me. The sentence was not loud. It did not need to be. Ryan had no answer because every defense he prepared sounded smaller when compared to 6 years of memories. Emma walked toward the bedroom and returned with a small box. Inside were photographs, handwritten notes, and small reminders of their marriage. Ryan recognized every moment. Their first apartment. Their first vacation. The night he received funding for his company. The dinner where Emma celebrated his success, even though she had just declined a major career opportunity of her own. Ryan picked up one photograph. You never told me about this. Emma looked at it. You were excited about your company launch. I did not want to make it about me. Ryan looked at her. You turned down that project because of me? Emma smiled sadly. I turned it down because I believed we were building something together. That sentence hurt more than anger would have, because Ryan knew she was right. Emma had never asked him to choose between work and her. She had simply hoped that one day he would choose her without being asked. The next morning, Ryan woke up expecting the conversation to continue. He expected another argument, another chance to explain. But the house was quiet. Emma had already left for work. Her coffee cup was gone from the kitchen counter. Her shoes were missing from the entryway. Small things. Ordinary things. Things he had never noticed because he assumed they would always be there. Ryan checked his phone. No messages from Emma. No reminder about his schedule. No simple question asking whether he had eaten lunch. For the first time in years, his day began without Emma quietly organizing the pieces around him. At the office, Ryan opened his calendar and saw the date. Their anniversary was still marked with a reminder he had created years ago. He had simply ignored it. He stared at the notification for a long time. Then he opened the folder Emma left behind. The divorce papers were still there, but beneath them was something he had not expected. A letter. Ryan read the first line and felt his chest tighten. I did not leave because I stopped loving you. I left because I forgot what it felt like to be loved by you. For the first time, Ryan wondered if losing Emma had started long before midnight. Maybe the divorce papers were not the beginning of the ending. Maybe they were the moment he finally noticed it. The strangest part about losing someone was not the silence. It was realizing how much noise had disappeared with them. Ryan noticed it everywhere. The empty space beside the coffee machine. The missing notes on his calendar. The absence of the small reminders he once considered ordinary. For years, Emma had been the invisible structure holding his life together. She remembered birthdays, appointments, family events, and every detail Ryan forgot because he was always chasing the next goal. He never thought of it as something valuable. He thought of it as something permanent. Until it stopped. A week after Emma left, Ryan returned to their house after another late night at the office. He opened the door expecting the same familiar warmth. Instead, the house felt different. Not empty, just honest. Emma had taken only her belongings. She had not destroyed anything. She had not left angry messages. She had simply removed herself from a life where she no longer felt seen. Ryan walked into the kitchen and noticed the counter was clean. Too clean. No prepared dinner. No glass of water waiting beside his usual chair. No quiet evidence that someone had spent years thinking about him. He stood there longer than he expected. You really are gone, he whispered. The next morning, Ryan called Emma. She answered after several rings. Hello. Her voice was calm, not cold. That somehow made it harder. Can we talk? Ryan asked. There was a pause. About what? The question surprised him. About us. Another pause. Ryan, we already talked about us. For years. He sat down at the kitchen table. The same table where they had celebrated promotions, holidays, and ordinary weekends. I want to fix this. Emma was quiet. Do you know what I find interesting? She asked. What? You never said that when I was still there. Ryan looked down. He wanted to argue. He wanted to explain that he had been busy, that he had responsibilities, that he was trying to build a future. But every excuse sounded familiar. He had used them before. I know I made mistakes, he said. You did. Her honesty caught him off guard. But I thought you would always understand. Emma's voice softened. I did understand. That was the problem. Ryan closed his eyes. What does that mean? It means I spent so much time understanding why you could not be there that I stopped asking why you never tried harder to be there. The silence afterward felt heavier than any argument they had ever had. Ryan realized something painful. Emma had not left because she suddenly stopped loving him. She left because loving him had become something she did alone. Meanwhile, Emma was rebuilding a life she had almost forgotten existed. She returned to her design work and accepted projects she once would have declined. Her first major assignment after leaving came from a boutique hotel renovation in downtown Chicago. It was exactly the kind of creative challenge she loved before marriage became her entire focus. Her colleague, Sarah, looked through the design plans and smiled. "I forgot how talented you are." Emma looked at the sketches spread across the table. For a moment, she felt like she was meeting an old version of herself. A woman who dreamed without asking whether someone else approved. A woman who had goals beyond keeping everything together. That evening, Ryan saw an online article about the renovation project. The featured designer was Emma Carter. He stared at the screen. He had spent years introducing her as his wife. He had forgotten she was also someone with her own ambition. Someone with her own name. Someone who had been waiting to be seen. Ryan closed the article and looked at the divorce papers on his desk. For the first time, he understood the difference between losing something valuable and losing something you assumed would always belong to you. Emma was not becoming a different person. She was finally becoming herself again. And Ryan was beginning to realize that the woman he missed was not the woman who left. She was the woman he failed to notice while she was still there. Ryan used to believe time fixed everything. Give people enough space. Let emotions settle. Wait until the right moment. That was how he handled business decisions, negotiations, and every difficult conversation in his life. But he was beginning to understand something uncomfortable. Time did not fix what people refused to face. It only made the distance easier to see. 3 weeks after Emma left, Ryan found himself sitting in his office after everyone else had gone home. The city lights outside his window reflected against the glass, but for the first time in years, the view did not feel like success. It felt empty. On his desk were documents from the company, financial reports, and emails waiting for responses. Beside them was a small box he had brought from home. Inside were things he had ignored for years. A handwritten note Emma left on his birthday. A photo from their first apartment. A small card from the day he opened his company. Ryan picked up the card and read the words again. "I knew you could do this before anyone else did." He remembered that day clearly. He had been nervous. The company was only an idea, and everyone around him questioned whether it would work. Everyone except Emma. She had stayed up late helping him prepare presentations. She had reviewed documents she barely understood because she wanted to understand what mattered to him. She had celebrated every small victory as if it belonged to both of them. Ryan placed the card down slowly. He had spent years thinking Emma was simply supportive. Now he realized something different. She had been sacrificing. The next morning, Ryan visited Emma's design studio. He almost turned around before entering. The woman behind the reception desk smiled. "Can I help you?" Ryan hesitated. He was used to people knowing his name before he introduced himself. Here, he was simply someone arriving without an appointment. "I am here to see Emma Carter." A few minutes later, Emma appeared. She looked different. Not because she had changed her appearance. Not because she was trying to prove anything. She simply looked peaceful. Ryan noticed that immediately. "You look happy," he said. Emma gave a small smile. "I am." The simple answer surprised him. "Good." He looked around at the design boards, sketches, and materials covering the studio. "This is what you wanted to do." Emma nodded. "Yes." Ryan looked at the projects displayed on the wall. "Why did you never tell me how much this mattered?" Emma looked at him quietly. "I did." Ryan frowned. "When?" "Many times." She walked toward one of the designs. "Every time I mentioned wanting to take bigger projects. Every time I talked about expanding my work. Every time I said I missed creating things." Ryan remembered. That was the problem. He remembered hearing the words. He did not remember listening to them. "I thought you were happy," he admitted. Emma looked at him. "I was happy when I was with you." A pause followed. "But I was slowly disappearing inside the life we built." Ryan had no response. Because for the first time, he understood that Emma leaving was not a sudden decision. It was the result of hundreds of moments, where she quietly became smaller. "I want another chance," Ryan said. Emma looked down. "Why?" The question caught him. "Because I miss you." Emma nodded slowly. "That is honest." Ryan waited. But missing someone is not the same as understanding why they left. The word stayed with him. He wanted to promise everything. He wanted to say he would change. But Emma had heard promises before. This time, words would not be enough. As Ryan left the studio, he looked back once. Emma was already returning to her work. Not waiting. Not watching him leave. Just living. That was when Ryan finally understood the truth he had avoided. He did not lose Emma because she stopped loving him. He lost her because he believed love meant she would always stay, no matter how often he forgot to choose her. Ryan thought changing would be the difficult part. He was wrong. The difficult part was accepting that Emma did not need to see him change. She had already spent 6 years waiting for proof that he cared. Now that she had finally stopped waiting, every effort he made felt different. It was no longer about convincing her. It was about becoming someone he could respect, even if she never returned. That realization was uncomfortable. Ryan Mitchell was a man who knew how to solve problems. When his company struggled, he built new strategies. When negotiations failed, he found new approaches. When challenges appeared, he worked harder. But Emma was not a problem to solve. She was a person he had failed to understand. For the first time, Ryan started asking questions without expecting answers that made him feel better. He talked to people who knew Emma before their marriage. He visited her old design mentor, Claire Bennett, who had worked with Emma years earlier. "She was one of the most creative designers I ever met," Claire said. Ryan looked surprised. "She never mentioned that." Claire smiled sadly. "She mentioned it many times. You were just busy building your future." The sentence stayed with him. Building their future. That was what Ryan always believed he was doing. But he had built a future where Emma was expected to stand quietly beside him instead of standing with him. Meanwhile, Emma's career continued moving forward. Her hotel renovation project gained attention, and she was invited to lead a larger design collaboration in New York. It was the kind of opportunity she once dreamed about. Years ago, she would have hesitated. She would have asked whether the timing was right for Ryan, whether it would affect his schedule, whether it would create inconvenience. This time, she simply accepted. When Ryan heard about the opportunity, he felt two emotions at once: pride and regret. He was proud because he knew how talented she was. He regretted that she needed to leave him to finally receive the encouragement she always deserved. A few days later, Ryan met Emma for coffee. Not at their old restaurant. Not somewhere connected to memories. Just a quiet cafe where two people could talk honestly. "I heard about New York," he said. Emma smiled. "You did?" "Yes. Congratulations." She studied him carefully. "Thank you." Ryan looked at his coffee. "I want you to know something." Emma waited. "I am proud of you." The words were simple, but they carried something different this time. They were not spoken by a husband expecting appreciation. They were spoken by someone finally recognizing another person's value. Emma looked away for a moment. "Ryan, I appreciate that." He nodded. "But," she sighed softly, "but I do not know if that changes anything." He accepted the answer. Months ago, he would have tried to persuade her. He would have explained. He would have asked for another chance before understanding what she needed. Now he simply listened. "I understand," he said. Emma looked surprised. "You do?" Ryan smiled faintly. "I am learning." For the first time, she saw something different in him. Not desperation. Not fear of losing control. Just humility. But healing did not erase history. Emma still remembered every lonely dinner. Every canceled plan. Every moment she chose patience while he chose another priority. Forgiveness was not the same as forgetting. That evening, Ryan returned home and opened the drawer where he kept old documents. Inside was a photo from their first year of marriage. Emma was laughing. Ryan was looking at her instead. Of the camera, he remembered that version of himself. The man who noticed everything about her. Somewhere along the way, he stopped paying attention. He had spent years chasing success because he believed he was building a life worth sharing with Emma. He never realized that the life was already there. He just stopped showing up for it. On the other side of the city, Emma prepared her designs for New York. She looked at the plans in front of her and smiled. She was not moving forward because she hated Ryan. She was moving forward because she finally remembered herself. And for the first time, both of them understood the same truth. Love could survive mistakes, but it could not survive being taken for granted forever. Ryan thought the hardest part of changing would be admitting he was wrong. He was mistaken. The hardest part was learning that an apology did not automatically create a second chance. For years, Ryan had believed effort was measured by results. Longer hours, bigger achievements, more success. He had built a company from nothing and convinced himself every sacrifice was necessary because one day Emma would look back and understand. But now he finally saw the truth. Emma had understood the entire time. She had simply been waiting for him to understand her. The weeks after Emma accepted the New York opportunity changed something between them. They were no longer fighting. They were no longer trying to prove who was right. They were simply two people standing on opposite sides of a life they had once shared. Ryan respected her distance, but he still wanted to show her that his change was real. Not through promises, not through dramatic gestures, through consistency. He started leaving work earlier. He began spending time away from his phone. He visited his parents more often. He learned to listen without immediately searching for a solution. His employees noticed first. His assistant, Mark, looked surprised one evening when Ryan declined a late meeting. "You are leaving before 7?" Mark asked. Ryan smiled slightly. "Apparently the world continues spinning after I go home." Mark laughed. "Who are you and what did you do with my boss?" Ryan smiled. But the joke stayed with him. The old Ryan would have found it impossible to step away. The new Ryan was learning that being successful did not mean being unavailable. Meanwhile, Emma prepared for her move to New York. Her apartment was filled with design samples, sketches, and boxes. She should have felt nervous. Instead, she felt peaceful. For the first time in years, her decisions belonged completely to her. One evening, Ryan came by to return some documents. He stood at the doorway, looking at the boxes around the room. "You are really leaving?" Emma nodded. "Yes." He looked around. "Are you excited?" She smiled. "I am." Ryan accepted that answer. A year ago, he might have heard it as rejection. Now he heard something else. Happiness. "I am sorry," he said quietly. Emma looked at him. "For what?" Ryan took a breath. "For making you feel like loving me meant waiting for me." Emma did not respond immediately. The honesty surprised her. "Ryan, I do believe you are sorry." He looked up. "But..." She gave a small smile. "But healing does not happen because someone finally says the right words. It happens because people live differently afterward." Ryan nodded slowly. "I understand." And this time, Emma believed he was trying to. A few days before leaving, Emma received an invitation to a major design event in New York. Her work was being recognized by people who had no connection to Ryan, no reason to see her as anyone except herself. She held the invitation for a long time, not because she doubted her ability, because she realized something important. She no longer needed someone else to confirm her worth. On the night before her flight, Ryan met her one last time before the move. They sat at a quiet cafe near her apartment. No arguments. No desperate requests. Just two people sharing a conversation they should have had years earlier. "Do you hate me?" Ryan asked. Emma looked surprised. "No. I thought maybe you would." She shook her head. "I was hurt. There is a difference." Ryan looked down. "I wish I understood sooner." Emma smiled sadly. "I do too." The silence between them was not uncomfortable anymore. It was honest. When they said goodbye, Ryan did not ask her to stay. He did not ask her to wait. He simply said, "I hope you become everything you wanted to become." Emma looked at him for a moment. "I hope you do too." After she left, Ryan stood outside the cafe watching the city lights. For the first time, he was not thinking about how to get Emma back. He was thinking about how to become someone who deserved the love he once received. And somewhere between losing her and learning from it, Ryan finally understood that real change was not about proving he could keep her. It was about becoming the person he should have been while he had her. The first thing Emma noticed about New York was that nobody knew who she used to be. There was no reputation attached to her name. No one introduced her as Ryan Mitchell's wife. No one asked how she supported her husband's company or whether she was comfortable putting her dreams aside. Here, she was simply Emma Carter, the designer whose ideas filled the room. And strangely enough, that felt like freedom. 3 months after moving, Emma stood inside the completed hotel lobby she had designed. The space was filled with natural light, warm colors, and carefully chosen details that reflected everything she believed design should be. Every corner told a story. Every choice had meaning. Her team gathered around her, celebrating the successful launch. "You should be proud," Sarah said. Emma smiled. "I am." It was a simple answer, but it carried years of weight behind it. She was proud, not because someone else finally noticed her, not because Ryan finally understood her, because she had finally recognized herself. Meanwhile, back in Chicago, Ryan was learning what life looked like without the person who had quietly organized everything around him. He was not miserable. He was not trying to make Emma feel guilty for leaving. That was the difference. He was simply living with the consequences of his own choices. He attended company meetings differently. He listened more. He asked his employees about their lives instead of only discussing deadlines. The company did not collapse because Ryan left the office earlier. In fact, several employees noticed that the atmosphere improved. One afternoon, Mark sat across from him during lunch. "Can I ask you something?" Ryan looked up. "That depends. Are you still trying to get Emma back?" Ryan was quiet for a moment. Months earlier, he would have answered immediately. Now he thought carefully. "I do not know." Mark raised an eyebrow. "That is not the answer I expected." Ryan looked out the window. "I miss her, but I think there is a difference between missing someone and being ready for them." Mark nodded slowly. "That sounds like something Emma would say." Ryan smiled faintly. "She probably already did. I just did not understand it then." 6 months after the divorce papers were signed, Ryan received an invitation to Emma's design exhibition. He almost declined. Not because he did not want to support her, because he wondered if his presence would make the moment about him again. That was something he never wanted to do to her anymore. But Emma personally sent him a message. "You can come if you want. No pressure." Ryan read the message several times. The old version of himself would have searched for hidden meaning. The new version understood the simplicity of it. She was giving him a choice. So he went. The exhibition was everything Emma had always wanted. Creative, elegant, personal. Ryan walked through the displays quietly, seeing pieces of her personality in every detail. A visitor stopped near one design and asked, "Who created this?" Emma answered with a smile. "I did." Ryan heard the pride in her voice. Not arrogance. Not the need for approval. Just confidence. Later that evening, they stood outside the venue. The city lights reflected across the street, and for a moment, it felt strangely familiar. "You did well," Ryan said. Emma smiled. "Thank you." A pause followed. "How are you?" she asked. Ryan considered giving the easy answer. Instead, he told the truth. "Better. Still learning." Emma nodded. "That sounds honest." He smiled. "I am trying." She looked at him carefully. "I know." Those two words meant more than he expected, because they were not forgiveness. Not yet. They were recognition. Acknowledgement that his effort was real. Ryan looked at the woman in front of him and realized something important. The goal was never to convince Emma to return to the person she had been. The goal was to respect the person she had become. And for the first time, Ryan was not afraid of Emma moving forward without him. He was grateful that she had found herself again. But he also knew one thing. Some stories did not end when two people separated. Sometimes they only revealed what both people needed to learn before they could meet again. Emma never expected peace to feel so unfamiliar. For years, her life had been built around reacting to someone else's needs. Ryan's schedule, Ryan's goals, Ryan's responsibilities. She had become so used to adjusting herself that making decisions only for her own happiness felt almost strange. But in New York, she was learning something important. A person could love someone deeply and still lose themselves along the way. And finding herself again did not mean she had to hate the person she once loved. It simply meant she finally understood that her own dreams mattered too. Nearly a year after leaving Chicago, Emma stood in her studio looking at the newest project proposal on her desk. It was the largest opportunity of her career. A national design company wanted her to lead a major creative project across several cities. Her team celebrated the news, but Emma remained quiet for a moment. Not because she was afraid, because she remembered a time when opportunities like this would have created conflict. She remembered asking herself whether success was worth making Ryan uncomfortable. Now, she only asked one question. Did this choice feel right for her? The answer was clear. Yes. Meanwhile, Ryan was preparing for a different kind of challenge. His company was expanding, but his priorities had changed. He no longer measured every day only by numbers and achievements. He started making time for people. He started attending important moments instead of assuming others would understand his absence. One evening, Ryan sat in his office reviewing old company documents when he found a folder from the early years of the business. Inside were notes Emma had helped organize. Ideas she had written down during late nights when he was building his first plans. He smiled as he read her handwriting. She had believed in him before anyone else did. And he realized something that still surprised him. Emma had never been the person standing behind his success. She had been part of the reason he reached it. He had simply been too focused on the destination to notice the person walking beside him. A few weeks later, Ryan and Emma met again during a charity design event. This time, there was no awkward tension between them. They talked naturally. They laughed about old memories. They shared stories about their separate lives. "You seem different," Emma said. Ryan smiled. "I am trying to be." She looked at him. "That sounds like something you would not have said before." He laughed softly. "Probably not." There was a comfortable silence. Then Ryan became serious. "I want you to know something. I do not expect anything from you." Emma listened carefully. "I used to think if I apologized enough or proved I changed enough, things would go back to how they were. But I understand now that going back is not the goal." Emma looked surprised. "Then what is?" Ryan looked at the city around them. "Becoming someone who would not make the same mistakes again." For a moment, Emma saw the man she remembered from the beginning of their relationship. Not the ambitious CEO who forgot everything outside his goals. Not the husband who assumed love would wait forever. Just Ryan, the person she fell in love with before both of them lost their way. But Emma had learned not to confuse memories with reality. Growth mattered, but trust took time. "I am glad you are changing," she said. "I really am." Ryan nodded. "Thank you. But I need you to understand something. I cannot become the person who waits for you again." Ryan looked at her and nodded. "I know." And that answer mattered more than any promise. Because this time, he was not asking Emma to stay still while he caught up. He was accepting that she had already moved forward. Months passed, and their connection slowly became something different. There was no pressure, no expectations, just two people learning how to speak honestly again. Then, on an ordinary afternoon, Emma received a message from Ryan. It was simple, no emotional request, no attempt to change her mind, just one sentence. "I hope you know I am grateful that you chose yourself." Emma stared at the message for a long time. Because for the first time, Ryan was not afraid of losing her. He was finally happy that she had found herself. And that was when Emma realized something she never expected. Sometimes the person who loses you is not the only one who needs to change. Sometimes both people need to become whole before they can understand what they truly mean to each other. 1 year after Emma left Chicago, she returned to the city for the first time. Not because she needed to go back. Not because she was searching for something she had lost. She returned because she had built a life where she could choose her own direction. And that difference changed everything. The city looked familiar, but Emma was not the same woman who once sat alone at a restaurant table waiting for someone who had forgotten the most important day of their marriage. She was now the woman whose designs were recognized across the country. The woman who trusted her own decisions. The woman who no longer measured her worth by how much she could give to someone else. She arrived in Chicago for a design conference where her newest project was being featured. After the presentation ended, she walked through the venue and heard someone call her name. "Emma." She turned around. Ryan stood there. For a moment, neither of them spoke. A year ago, that silence would have been filled with pain. Now it was simply two people remembering everything they had been through. Ryan looked different. Not because he had changed his appearance. Not because he was trying to impress her. He just seemed calmer. More present. "Congratulations," he said. "Your project was amazing." Emma smiled. "Thank you." They talked for a while. About work. About life. About the people they had become after everything changed. Ryan did not bring up the divorce. He did not ask about another chance. He did not try to rewrite the past. That was what Emma noticed most. The old Ryan always wanted to fix things quickly. This Ryan understood that some things needed time. "I wanted to give you something," Ryan said. He handed her a small envelope. Emma looked uncertain. "What is it?" "Just something I wrote." She opened it carefully. Inside was a letter. It was not a love letter asking her to return. It was not a list of promises. It was simply an honest reflection. Ryan wrote about the years they shared, about the moments he missed, about the things he finally understood. The final line caught her attention. "Thank you for leaving when I was not ready to change. You gave me the chance to become someone better, even if that meant becoming someone without you." Emma read the sentence twice, because she knew how difficult it was for him to admit that. "You really changed," she said quietly. Ryan smiled. "I had to." A small silence followed. Then Emma looked toward the city streets outside. "Do you remember our first anniversary?" Ryan laughed softly. "I remember. You planned everything." He nodded. "I was terrified because I wanted it to be perfect." Emma smiled. "It was not perfect." Ryan looked surprised. It was not. No. She looked at him. But you were there. That was what mattered. Ryan understood the meaning behind her words. The problem had never been that he failed to create perfect moments. The problem was that he stopped being present for the simple ones. Later that evening, they walked through the neighborhood where they once lived. They passed familiar places, but neither of them felt trapped by the memories. They were simply remembering. Do you ever regret leaving? Ryan asked. Emma thought carefully before answering. No. He nodded, even though the answer was difficult. Why? Because I needed to find myself again. She paused. And I think you needed to find yourself too. Ryan smiled. Maybe we both lost our way. Emma looked at him. Maybe. The night ended without promises. Without dramatic decisions. Without pretending the past never happened. They said goodbye as two people who had finally learned how to respect each other. Months later, Emma received a message from Ryan on a familiar date. This time, he remembered. Happy anniversary, Emma. Not because he expected anything. Not because he wanted to undo the past. Just because some days mattered. Emma smiled when she saw it. She did not know what the future would bring. But she knew one thing. Love was not about holding someone so tightly that they disappeared. It was about choosing each other freely, every single day. And for the first time in years, both Emma and Ryan were finally free to make that choice.